What's up, guys? Back with another episode with the amateurs. Real stories, real situations, real talk. Today we have two guests with us today, Aneesh and Ankit. Both are brothers and doing big things in the sports industry. Thank you guys for joining us today.
Happy to be on, man. Thanks for having us.
Yeah.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah.
Definitely. You guys are back home, San Diego. How was everyone's Thanksgiving? It's the day after Thanksgiving for those listening.
It was good, man. I think it was just we kept it pretty just immediate family only, just with everything that's going on. So it was just us two and our parents, our older brothers up in the Bay Area with his girlfriend. But it was good, man. Ate a lot.
Definitely. So we'll start by getting into a game that we call the 1 minute warm up. Basically, an opportunity for like our listeners to get to know you better. Of course, us to get to know you better as well. So I have about 11 to 12 questions for you guys. I'll start by asking Ankit a few questions, and then Aneesh, Jan will jump in and ask you a few questions.
Yep.
You guys have one skip each, 1 minute to complete the questions, and we can get into it.
So one skip we get?
Yeah, one skip.
Okay. Let's do it.
All right. On the first question, Jerry. All right. What's your favorite sports team?
The Lakers.
Favorite food?
Pasta.
What is the last place that you visited?
I guess technically New York.
Best sporting event that you've ever attended?
Probably the All-Star game.
Nice. Best high school basketball player that you've ever seen?
Norman Powell.
Got you. All right.
Mm-hmm. All right, Aneesh. Favorite NBA team?
Lakers for sure.
Yes.
Hidden talent that no one knows about?
I'm not sure if it's hidden, but just recognizing athletes in public, I would say.
Okay. Favorite TV show?
Probably Entourage.
Nice.
One word to describe you?
Motivated.
Okay, LeBron, Kobe, or Jordan?
Kobe.
I gotta respect it. All right, so I'm a huge LeBron fan. I got my Finals MVP team on right now. We have this ongoing tally going on, like who likes Jordan over LeBron over Kobe, that whole thing. So I have my hopes high when you guys are both Lakers fans, but of course I could actually who do you have in the GOAT battle? Is it Kobe?
Mean, in the GOAT battle, I think it's LeBron or Jordan, but I mean, growing up, Kobe was our guy, so we have a little bit of definitely a preference for him. But I mean, we're big Lakers fans, so in turn, we definitely are on the LeBron train as well.
Love it.
I think Kobe's getting lost in there a little bit, But rest in peace, Kobe, man. Yeah. We lost a great one.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Skill level, with his skill, I don't know how he's not in that top 3, top 5 conversation. He has to.
Yeah, for sure. 100%. Mine was always Mike, Kobe, then LeBron. So, I mean, we're from Chicago too, so we're kind of biased to Mike. Well, I'm biased to Mike.
Definitely.
But yeah, so let's get into it, man. You guys have worked with some of the greatest companies in sports. But let's start from the beginning. What role did sports play in you all's lives early on, and then where did your love for sports originate from?
I can start off. I think obviously it was never we always played sports growing up. I think that's really where it started. Our dad really put us onto that, but we moved around different places. We lived in Singapore for a few years and in India for a few years. So sports was really the only thing that connected us back to the US. And I think just being there overseas and still following the NBA, still following other sports, allowed us to just feel some connection back to the States. So obviously played sports growing up, and obviously I'm 5'7" and had no plans of playing college basketball, but knew that I love the game and wanted to try and pursue it after that. But I think age 12, 13 is really when we started getting super serious about sports and locking into knowing guys on every team, knowing contracts, things of that nature. So we just wanted to be able to be a part of what's going on without being able to play at a high level.
Yeah, I mean, I would echo everything Aneesh just mentioned. I think it all started just by kind of watching, and then it just turned into sort of a huge passion for us just to be able to really be consuming it on a day-to-day basis by watching, by reading about it. So it was really just it was just part of a lifestyle for us always, and it was just more of a, our dad grew up in LA in the 80s during the Showtime era, so he was that's kind of how he got his start, and I guess just sort of passed down that way.
So you guys both co-founded 24/7 Hoops. Where did the idea come from, and what was the process like building the process for you guys building that?
For the way I would describe it is, it's something that we wanted it like in between internships and not like actually having sort of something full time. It was just sort of something to put on the resume to like actually show that we were reading about the game, writing about the game, watching the game. We would send it out to people in the NBA front offices just to make just as a way to as a conversation starter. So that was really the way we used it, and obviously it's something that in between we weren't studying all day every day. It was more of a just something to do on the side to kind of just make sure we are completely staying locked in and showing that we're we want to be in the industry, and just another way to start a conversation with people that actually work in the space.
Definitely. I'm happy that you touched on that, because I was having a conversation with Jaren, previous to this, about trying to find ways to, like you all said, like show that you have an actual knowledge of the sport and the business behind the sport, because the industry is tough to break into, and they aren't just hiring college students that love basketball, So just having those different projects and tangible experiences to speak to and point to on your resume, I can imagine that being huge.
It was good just because I think for us, like we didn't play the game in high school or college. Like we had to show some way to show our knowledge and show that we know what we're talking about. So it had to be a little bit of a different path than I think someone that played college basketball at a high level or whatever had connections in the industry. Like their path could be completely different, but for us, it had to be us taking the initiative to try and do something different. So I think that was just the motivation behind starting it.
Definitely.
And then you guys were, branding yourselves too, which is always a good thing. And we're trying to, push that for athletes now, on the show, just the importance of branding yourself and, just being, more than an athlete. So that's
sure. 1,000%.
Absolutely. Makes sense.
And you all, spoke a bit about internships, and you've both had great internships. Wasserman, Adidas, which, eventually led to a full-time opportunity for you, Aneesh. But having been through the process, how would you all advise students to go about, I guess, the application process? And if you all have any, tips for students on how they can stand out or best position themselves for those opportunities, we'd love to hear.
Yeah, I think it's always important to kind of have an understanding of, I guess, a few or a dozen companies that you would want to work at, I think, and being able to track those, and obviously staying on job boards and making sure you're not missing, internships that come up. And, first and foremost, you have to, kind of apply to actually get the roles and make sure you're on top of when the application comes out. But I think too, it's also kind of finding people that, work at those companies that have interesting jobs that you think like, hey, maybe one day, I want to be a basketball agent, or I want to work, on the marketing side. Like find people that, have jobs that you eventually want to have. And I think something Aneesh and I did was just, we were just constantly reaching out to people, asking if they would take 15-20 minutes of their day to chat about their roles and, how we can break into the industry. And although, and, you're going to get a ton of rejections, but at the same time, there are people that are willing to help and are going to have the conversation. And, eventually those things kind of lead you to an opportunity to get an internship when, you apply and you realize, hey, I spoke to these 3 people at that company. You can, once that application comes out, you can kind of reach out to them and say, I just saw this, come up, obviously love to work there. Is there any way you can kind of help me out? So I think, those are the few things that we did that were, super beneficial and kind of allowed us to break into the industry a little bit. And I mean, that's kind of the first thing that I would do is as a student and as an applicant. I think, Aneesh, if you want to hit on a few things that I didn't, but.
Yeah, I would just agree to that. Like if you find places that you want to work at, you find people that have job titles that sound interesting or job titles that you could potentially see yourself being, like those are the people to reach out to. And I think it's important not to necessarily have like a template for how to reach out to people. Like everyone every email, every message should be different, right? Like I think you can't say like, hey, we'd love to take 15 minutes out of your day just to discuss, what you do at your company or how you got in the industry, but make it personalized to say like, hey, I just saw Adidas basketball did this, would love to chat for 15, 20 minutes about how you potentially may have had a role in that coming to life. It was super interesting. So just making sure like you do your homework before even reaching out to people, just to show that you're prepared and willing to do what it takes to like get into the industry, right? Like reading up on industry news, seeing what's going on in the business, and then making sure that you're knowledgeable about what's going on. You don't want to everyone to ask the same questions. You're not going to stand out from the rest of the applicants. If everyone is asking like, hey, like how'd you break into the industry? What is your role? Like, do you have any advice? Everyone's going to ask those questions. But if you're able to ask specific questions about their role or something that you saw their company doing or having a point of view about something that came out in the news, like those are all ways to sort of stand out. And then when those internships come out, they're much more likely to remember you than someone that just asked about what their career path is and any advice that they might have. So standing out, I think, is the best way to land in this industry, and the best way to do that is to come prepared.
Definitely. That's great advice.
Yep. Both of you guys both have integral roles in the sports industry. Have you guys ever worked on a project or anything together?
Not on anything specifically. I think there's a little bit of crossover. Some of the athletes that we represent at CAA are obviously Adidas athletes. One that comes to mind is obviously Donovan Mitchell, who's kind of a signature athlete. So we've, I guess, crossed paths a little bit there.
Okay.
We're whether it's at photo shoots or the things like that. I guess that's kind of the one tie in there. But I think there's Adidas and CAA, I think, are intertwined not just on the basketball level, but across the baseball group, even football and golf, things like that. So I think we've crossed paths, I guess, a few times, but I think Adidas and CAA are kind of intertwined a little bit, even more than just on the basketball court.
Yeah, that's dope. But what's one piece of advice you guys both have, for early career professionals who have, just entered the sports industry?
Yeah, I think would say I can go ahead and go start.
Yeah.
I think for people that are just entering the industry, is like make sure you're on top of what's going on. I think it just goes back to what I said earlier. Is like the thing you can control is like how prepared you are and how knowledgeable you are about a certain subject or what you're doing. Like you can't necessarily control the people you may know or whatever, but you can control how much you read about the industry, how much you watch games or whatever. Like those are being prepared is what you can control. And I think that's the best way to continue to stay in and make sure that you're going above and beyond what other people are doing. If you're knowledgeable about what's going on, if you're knowledgeable about what's going on in the space, people are always going to want information and are always going to seek out information. If you're able to provide that, you're invaluable to the organization, invaluable to the company you're working at.
That's a great point.
Yeah, I would echo everything Aneesh just said. I think one thing that we always, like we mentioned, was we didn't play at a high level. We were not athletic enough. We weren't tall enough. But I think the one thing we did was just consume everything we could. And I think if you're reading, if you're watching, if you're listening to podcasts, if you are doing all those sorts of things, that in and of itself will put you above someone who's not putting in the work. And that's kind of the way. That's the best way to go about it, especially in a situation where there are hundreds of applicants or hundreds and thousands of students who are looking for jobs in this industry. Is standing out and being prepared and reading and listening and watching everything is what's going to set you apart.
Definitely. And I know a few. I'm subscribed to a few newsletters, Front Office Sports, of course, things like that kind of helped me to do that. But I'm happy that you guys touched on the importance of adding value early in your career. And there are ways to do that. Those that are in higher positions can't do. They might not have as much time to read and stay up to date on everything. So if you all are able to provide value in that regard, that'll be extremely helpful. But fast forward into present day, Ankit, you're currently at CAA, as you mentioned, as the assistant to the co-head of CAA. Can you speak a bit about what that means and what your day-to-day is like in that role?
Yeah, so I think, I guess I'd take it back a little bit. I think at CA and at CA Sports specifically, we have kind of that agent assistant model where each of our agents kind of have someone underneath them who can kind of assist them day to day in setting calls and meetings and giving them notes and things of that nature. So my role is currently under the co-head of CA Sports, Mike Levine. He and his partner currently kind of oversee our entire sports group and everything that comes with that, whether it's the basketball group, baseball group, football, or media rights division, or broadcasting group, just to name a few. So he kind of oversees the entire CA Sports brand and company. So my role is as an assistant is pretty administrative. I think it's setting calls, setting meetings. Before COVID was booking travel, all the things that kind of an assistant would typically do is kind of what my role is, and it's kind of just making sure he is kind of everywhere where he needs to be and making sure he's on top of everything going into his meetings and things of that nature. And I think kind of the good thing that we do at CA Sports is we allow our assistants to branch out a little and not just do the administrative stuff, but our sales assistants are able to prospect companies and reach out to brands that we could potentially partner with. I kind of help out on our social media efforts, for our own CA branded social, like our at CA Sports handle or at CA Basketball or at CA Football. So I've been kind of helping in that space a little bit over the last few months. But the assistant role is pretty typical, I think, of what you would imagine it and what you see. It's administrative, but at the same time, you learn a ton. You're able to listen in on calls that your boss is having, and so that stuff is all great, and it's a huge and great learning experience. So that's part of a big part of my role, but the other part is kind of helping our social media efforts as well.
Gotcha. If you don't mind me asking, like, what's your end goal?
Yeah, I think as many assistants are at CA, you want to eventually be promoted as to an agent. I think my focus has always been on kind of the basketball side, and but kind of through the role over the last year and a half, I've been able to see a ton of the different groups within CA Sports that I didn't know a ton about, like our media rights advisory group or our CA Icon group, which is basically a project manager for new stadiums that are built. So all the I've learned a ton, I guess, in the last 18 months that I didn't really know about. But I think my focus and like you mentioned kind of earlier on the call has always been to go into the hoop space.
For sure. Nice.
And Aneesh, you're the head of NBA, Adidas NBA partnerships. Can you dive into what your responsibilities are as well?
Yeah, for sure. I think so. At a brand like Adidas, our sports marketing basketball group sort of sits at the crossover between our athletes, the teams that we work with, and the leagues that we work with, specifically on the NBA side. Obviously, we have a group of signature athletes and other athletes that are endorsers of our brand, and then we have partnerships with NBA teams and a partnership with the NBA as well. So the sports marketing group sort of encompasses all those relationships and manages all those relationships and contracts. My role specifically is to work and manage the relationships with the NBA teams and the league office. So my day-to-day role is sort of working with teams that we have partnerships with on activating what those partnerships look like, negotiating new partnerships, and then just managing the relationship on a day-to-day basis with them. So we have partnerships with 5 teams across the NBA. A lot of those cities are based upon where we have a lot of our signature athletes, right? So we have a partnership with the Rockets, partnership with the Blazers, the Jazz as well. So my job is just to make sure that those relationships are going well. We're making sure that we're activating all the assets that we get as part of our contract with them. And then working with our athlete managers, Donovan's manager, James Harden's manager, Damian Lillard's manager, to make sure that to see if there are opportunities for us to leverage our team partnerships with our athlete as well. So we want to see the cohesion between working with the partnerships we have on the team side and using our our athletes to sort of make those come to life as well. So I'd say that's 60% of my job is managing those team partnership relationships.
Yeah.
Say 20% managing our league partnership relationship, which is essentially the same thing. So on a day-to-day basis, making sure that we're activating on what we're paying for essentially, and making sure that we're getting the value that we're looking to extract and get from the league. Which includes, again, using our athletes as sort of the gateway to do that. Having a lot of our Adidas brand spots show up on NBA social channels, or being able to use NBA footage in a lot of the content that we use. It's my job to sort of manage that day-to-day working relationship and make it all come to life. I'd say that's 20% of my job, and then I'd say the last 20% is just assisting on anything that's going on within our sports marketing department. So, new player acquisition, guys that we might be looking at in the draft, or shoe free agents, thinking about what those opportunities could look like. Also making sure that we're activating the athletes that we do have, right? Like, we don't want to pay a guy and not use them for Adidas opportunities. So it's really my boss's job is to make sure that that all our athletes are being activated, but I assist him on that front and figure out different opportunities to make it all come to life. So that's what I do in a nutshell. I'd say that's a good breakdown for how my role is.
Yeah,
and
sure.
I'm so extremely I guess enamored about the partnership space, something that I'm learning about now. And the one goal that we have on the show is to kind of introduce our listeners to opportunities in the sports industry, of course, as you all know. And you just spoke a bit about making sure that assets are activated, whether it be at the team level or individual players that are represented by Adidas. Can you think of, I guess, a recent marketing activation that you were a part of and can speak about off the top of your mind?
Yeah, I think one that really comes to mind that I think we did, and the whole team did an incredible job, was something we did in November of 2019 around a Dawn Issue 1 colorway that we had. It was the Mailman colorway, which is like based around the Jazz retro jerseys in 1997. And there was just a ton of hype around the shoe just in the Utah market, just because of the homage it paid back to those finals teams. And I think everyone, the design of the shoe was great, so the product team killed that. Donovan was super hyped about the shoe, and then the Jazz were super hyped about the shoe as well. So we wanted to find a way to sort of make that all come to life and bridge the gap between Donovan, the Jazz fans, and him wearing it on court. So myself and Donovan's athlete manager, we all came up with an idea to sort of have this activation at the Jazz Arena, and Donovan would debut that colorway that night when they're wearing the old retro jerseys. We had him walk in with like a mailbox, like a dope design mailbox that everyone picked up on social. So the whole tunnel walk, he walked in with that. That brought generated hype around the shoe. Then the Jazz were actually selling about like 400 pairs of those at the arena, and they all sold out before the game even started, just because generated. So I think that was a good example of just like everything within our group functioning properly, from the product all the way to the athlete to the team. So, and making that all come to life and seeing the direct success it had to product sell through is exactly what we wanted. So that one definitely stood out to me.
Right,
man.
So
it's well, my bad. It's funny how like important, I guess, the NBA tunnel has become, especially on social media. There's a whole League Fits account on Instagram, and everyone's trying to see like what these athletes are wearing. It's become a huge branding opportunity, for athletes and also the brands that they represent. That's been crazy to see over the past few years.
Yeah, it's been a space that I think we've definitely taken advantage of. Like, we've done a ton of stuff with Dame walking with the Stone Cold Steve Austin costume, the belt. There are a lot of things that we've done to sort of tie it back to the footwear he's going to be wearing on court. But yeah, like you said, it's just like one of those opportunities that everyone's sort of watching, and we try and take advantage in cool and creative ways. So it's been good. It's been a good way for us to engage our athletes on it and generate some hype around our footwear.
Definitely.
So we all know, we've been impacted by COVID tremendously. So how has, you guys' roles changed because of, the pandemic?
I think it's our industry
ahead.
was kind of hit a little bit. I think the travel part of it has been really tough, especially at our company working with clients on a day-to-day basis and being with them every step of the way. I think that has kind of really been altered, I think, over these last 10 months. That's the one thing that really stood out to me here. Our agents and my boss were traveling kind of every week or every few weeks, going to clients, talking to people, going to meetings, and that's kind of been all shifted into a virtual world. And I think I think we've adjusted well to it, but it's something that was kind of a staple of our company and has definitely been altered in terms of my role specifically. I think there's in the assistant kind of agent model has been altered a little bit because a big part of our job is making sure our bosses are functioning the way they need to function. I think not being with them on in person on a day-to-day basis is definitely altered communication, and it's changed the way we've had to do our jobs. And I think those first few months we're kind of figuring out a new way to do what we need to do. And I think we're starting to see, at least for myself, there's been that communication with my boss, making sure he's functioning well. And it's also, I think, allowed people to expand their roles a little bit, which I touched on earlier. I think the pandemic has given myself and other assistants an opportunity to kind of branch out a little bit and do things that they weren't kind of doing before. So, and that for me, that's been kind of helping our social efforts. But in that sense, my role's expanded a little bit since the pandemic, but it's also wind down from the assistant level where it's not a consistent day-to-day I guess check in with your boss to make sure he's running all good. Before it was you're checking with him every hour because he's in the office. Now it's more on a daily basis rather than an hourly basis, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think obviously when like basketball was the first thing that was sort of shut down because of COVID, and that sort of shut down what we sort of did for a couple of months there, just because there was no hoops happening. There was no plan in terms of what it could look like when it came back. So we were shut down there for a month or two without sort of any conversation about when we'd pick back up. And sort of once the bubble idea started coming around, I think that's when things started to pick up for me a little bit more. And I think a lot of my job just changed from the standpoint of like we still had like assets planned for the rest of the regular season when everything was shut down in March, and now is figuring out how to activate those assets while everyone was down in Orlando. So there's a lot of different brainstorming with the teams that we work with to sort of figure out, hey, like what can we be able to do down there in Orlando? Like what access can you guys have down there? Like how are we going to plan around whether it's like a takeover night that we were supposed to have at the arena? Like how does that asset shift into now a digital world in which everything sort of lives on your guys' social platforms? So that was like the first few months, just like brainstorming ways in which we could activate on the assets that we had, that we still had left over from that season, which was fun, but it was also challenging just because it was all super unknown, and everyone was sort of just going about this for the first time. So like no one had knowledge about what the best way forward is. So it was a good learning experience for us just to sort of figure out like this is a good understanding of like, hey, if something like this happens again, we have an understanding, but also gives us creative ways to sort of think outside the box on how we can potentially do other marketing activations in the future from a social or digital space as well. So it was good from that standpoint. I think the last few months things have sort of started to normalize. I think from a partnerships front, like all the conversations I've been having with teams is while there may not be like fans in the arena, so there's that piece of the puzzle, but I think everyone has sort of shifted their mindset to again finding creative ways and finding solutions for how we sort of go about this 2021 season. So I think the pandemic has sort of shifted my thinking just from being like an XYZ, like, oh, like this is what it is in our contract, like this is what we're gonna do, to now like, hey, if it says this, like what other ways can we sort of go about this activation or this element as part of our deal and find a creative way to like make it more special and make it different than what we've done in the past.
Man, that's one thing I've wondered though, as far as everything having to be shifted digitally, and we're already in an age where like everyone's on their phone most of the day, and just wondering if, you know, moving forward, even after the pandemic, if a lot of these activations will be executed digitally and things like that. So that's interesting that you spoke to that point a bit.
It'll be interesting to see what it looks like for next season. Like I think we're all still in the planning process right now, trying to figure it all out. So we'll try some different things for this season and see what sticks and see what doesn't.
I'll definitely be on the lookout. That'll be interesting for sure. But you guys have kind of talked about this a little bit, but I'm interested in knowing what you all would credit most to your success and where you all are today.
Yeah, I think I'd say it's just like we are been obsessed with like sports for so long that like all we do is we're constantly checking Twitter, we're constantly listening to podcasts, like we're just staying, like we honestly just like stay on top of what's going on. And like even if we didn't work in the industry, I'm pretty sure we would do the same just because we love hoops that much. And like so I think that's the biggest thing. If you're already doing that in your day-to-day life and your job is essentially expanding on just doing that, like I think there's going to be automatically you're just going to be more motivated to do more and just become better at what you do, is because it's something that you're super passionate about. And like we're constantly reading up on things, listening to as many podcasts, reading up on Twitter, for being the first to like see the news from the day. Like that's sort of all the preparation and work that we want to put in just because we love doing it. So like it doesn't feel like it is work at all. It just feels like another day and something that we want to see on a daily basis. So it's all part of it. I think, like, again, I don't want to sound like we've been successful or anything. We're like 2 years out of school, so like we've barely been in the industry that long. Like it's just one of those things that like it's just became our daily routine. And now to be able to have that sort of daily routine and have a job that sort of all ties back to that is awesome. No doubt.
So what are some highlights for both of you guys, you know, while working, you know, in the sports industry?
I think, for me, I think being able to kind of experience the Super Bowl and, you know, the NBA All-Star game were kind of two of our highlights. And, you know, obviously we have, you know, a ton of clients that, you know, are in the NFL that were at the Super Bowl and at the NBA All-Star game. Those were kind of two tentpole moments that were really cool to be a part of and actually, you know, be in those cities and be a part of what we were doing at CAA. So those kind of stand out from an event perspective. I think from a work perspective, and something that, you know, was really cool to kind of, you know, see from the ground up was, you know, when we brought on Dwayne Wade as kind of really, you know, we started a business with him, and, you know, at, you know, CAA, he's, you know, in partnership with him, we've started a kind of brand consulting division, you know, that kind of works and helps out brands that want to get to the kind of the minority consumer and the multicultural space, and being able to kind of be part of those conversations, listen in on those conversations with Dwayne and his team, and being able to bring him on in January, and now to see, you know, where that has led us over these last 11 months has been really, really cool. So from a work perspective, I'd say, you know, those kind of three things have been the highlight, you know, of an otherwise weird 2020. But yeah, those definitely stand out.
Yeah, I think similarly, like I think the All-Star game was one of the, like, All-Star weekend in as a whole was one of the best experiences I've had. We just did it as a brand. We did a ton, launched a lot of product, a lot of cool activations we had in Chicago, a lot of great stuff with the athletes that we're working with, and honestly, just like a great event to be at as well. So like all the planning that went into that, and then seeing it all come to life, and like being there and knowing that, you know, I had some part in it was honestly great to see. And like seeing the success that the brand had in Chicago was really cool. I was hopeful that we'd have an NBA finals to go to this year, but that was obviously not the case. But honestly, like anything that sort of I'm able to work on with a lot of the teams that we work with, like I've mentioned that 1997 activation, like seeing those things come to life, and like all are just like super cool experiences, just because knowing the work that it takes to make it all come to life, and then sort of seeing that work pay off, and then seeing it like in everyday life that like any NBA fan would see, like Donovan walking in that tunnel with that mailbox, or Dame walking in, whatever like that, to know that like you have a part in planning that process and making that thing come to life, and just the general NBA fan getting to see all of that and like getting excited over it is awesome. So to be able to like work at a brand that's able to, that is so culturally relevant within the space, and having a part of being a part of it, and planning a lot of that stuff and making a lot of that come to life, like is super exciting for me, and like really valuable experience moving forward.
For sure. And I think that's one of the things that stand out to me with working in the sports industry that I love so much, is being behind the scenes, and like you said, seeing that work that you put in come to life. That's always like an awesome feeling. But before we go, is there a quote or a mantra that you all live by and would like to share with the audience?
No
I'm not
quote.
sure if there's
I would say I think
quote.
Yeah, I don't think there's a quote. I think the mantra we picked up on it earlier was kind of just outworking everyone. I think being prepared and being able to work really hard, I think is something that we've lived by. And I think looking across our industry and our coworkers and the people that we work with, I think it's all very similar. Is that we all work really hard, and this is really a passion of everyone that works in this space. So I think that's kind of the mantra I fall back on. I don't, there's probably some quote out there that says all that, but that's kind of the mantra that at least I roll with, and I think Aneesh does the same.
Yeah, I agree, man. Like I think also, like I said this earlier, which is like controlling what you can control. I think like there's a lot of like a lot of people in this space like have the relationships that will get them in there, or like they knew someone that had a high level job and they just are able to get an entry level job just because they knew someone. But if you don't sort of have those connections built in, or you can, as long as you can just sort of control what you can control and be prepared and be knowledgeable, and like good things are going to happen, just if you put the work in, like Ankit said, and control the factors that you can, like that's all you can really ask for at the end.
For sure, definitely. And those are things that we come across as far as like advice a lot. So I'm happy that you are kind of continuing that trend, and we'll definitely take heed of that advice, and hopefully our listeners will too. But overall, this was a great episode. You guys gave a lot of great gems, and we appreciate you all coming on.
Yeah.
Of course, happy to do it, and appreciate you guys having us on.
Yep. Thank you guys again.